So not that long ago, I finished episode 25 and season 1 of the podcaster's journey. And I was showing up every week. I was creating content. I was sharing on socials. I was doing all the quote unquote right things. And maybe you can relate to that. I was promoting, otherwise known as shouting. If you've been on social media, you know what I'm talking about. It's a noisy place. And I felt like I was just adding to that noise with my podcast. And the worst part of it, I wasn't seeing any leads. No new connections, no real momentum from the show. And so it really got me to thinking, is this just a passion project? Is this just a content machine? Is that what I want? Or is this project actually helping anybody? Is this going to actually be an asset for my business, Podcast Builders? And so I got into it and I really dove into that. And that's part of where season 2 has come from. And so if this is anything that you can relate to, you're in the right spot. This episode today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about, is how I'm breaking down and restructuring my own podcast based on what I've studied for this episode, and 3 things that I'm doing to make it more lead generation friendly and just make more connections with other people. And I would encourage you to do the same so that you can stop shouting into the void and actually make some connections with some listeners. Because your podcast was made for more than just living on the internet. It was made to connect you with other people. It was made to introduce you to new people. It was made to take you and your listeners on a journey with your podcast and take them somewhere. So let's dive into this episode today and let's design that journey for you and your listeners. Okay, so here's the 3 things that I'm changing and redesigning in my podcast to actually move people forward and make more connections through my podcast. Number 1 is your podcast is not a funnel. It's the start of it. So this was a big distinction for me. For some reason, I had this idea that I was going to create this content. I was going to promote it on social media. It was going to grow, and it was going to bring people in through the door to work with. And I can tell you that after 25 episodes, it hasn't worked out that way. And part of that, I believe, is as I was preparing for this and working out the details of this, I was realizing that I was treating my podcast as the entire funnel. It wasn't just a piece of the funnel. It wasn't a tool in my tool belt. It was the tool. It was what I was leaning on to do all the heavy lifting for my business. Your podcast isn't meant to close the deal. It's the first handshake. When you're introducing yourself to someone, it's the first coffee date. It's where trust begins and not where the sales happen. Sure, you're going to run across some people that maybe listen to your podcast and just absolutely love what you're doing with your content and they want to work with you right away, but that is not the norm. And it's something that for some reason or another I missed, and I don't want you to miss it. So just take that away. I thought that if I just kept publishing, leads would come in, but it felt like shouting into the void like we talked about earlier. In Daniel Priestley's book, Oversubscribed, he talks about an encounter that he had with a friend. I think they were somewhere overseas in an open air market, and Daniel was walking through the market, and I've told this story before, so you may be familiar with it, but Daniel's walking through the market, and it's a noisy, crowded environment. And if you've ever been in an open seas market or an open air market overseas, you know that people are pushing things into your face and that they're really trying to shout and get your attention. It's kind of like a real life scenario of social media, a real life shouting match of trying to gather your attention. And Daniel, from across the way, saw his friend across the market. And as soon as he saw him, he got a smile on his face and he made a beeline for that guy because he knew this individual. And he knew what he wanted after he saw his friend there. Before that, he was pushing everybody else away and not really interested in what they had to sell, just kind of tuning them out. But when he saw his friend over there across the market, he's like, that's the person I want to talk to in this market. That's the person I want to do business with. And that's where he went. And that's what ended up happening. So don't think about your podcast about just promoting it, just shouting into the void, just shouting out into social media with your podcast. This is the episode I've done. This is what, come look at me, come listen to my episode. Because it's really not what it's about. It's about creating content that your ideal listener would resonate with, that would actually be helpful for them, and that's going to act as a handshake to start generating trust between you and that listener. In Daniel's book, he also talks about this study that Google did called the 7-11-4 rule, where you need multiple touch points to build trust. And so your podcast is only one of them. If you're not familiar with the 7-11-4 rule, I would definitely encourage you to go check it out. But basically, you need 7 hours of content with 11 interactions across 4 platforms. Go Google it. Super helpful. Your podcast is just one of those places, one of those intersections of the 4 that you need. So you have podcast, you have social media, you have email, you have in-person, or something else. You name it. You're going to need 4 interactions, but the podcast is only one of those. And so part of the journey with the podcast and being part of the funnel instead of being the whole funnel is being thoughtful about the journey that you want these people to take in your flow or your listener flow. And we're going to talk about that more in just a second. But to drive home this point even more with not being the entire funnel, your podcast not being the entire funnel, I want to touch on Donald Miller's StoryBrand as well. In StoryBrand, Donald talks about the idea that you don't ask someone to marry you on the first date. And if we take that into business, which is what Donald Miller is doing in the StoryBrand, he's talking about when we present ourselves and our solution to the hero of their story. We're not the hero of the story as the podcast host. Our listener is the hero of their story. So when we come alongside them as the guide to their story and we offer them help, we want to do so in a way that encourages trust, that encourages space to build that trust. If we come right out and just ask them to dive into the deep end with us and to get into a serious relationship, a serious working relationship together, it's going to be a turnoff for a lot of people because they don't know exactly what's going on. They don't know you well enough to actually do that. So give them space to develop that trust. Your podcast job is awareness and alignment, helping the right people feel safe and start to trust you. So give them space. Give them space to, and as weird as this may sound, and give them permission to date you with your business. Basically, don't ask for the sale right up front. Give them more value. Give them more content to let them know that you're trustworthy. So we were talking about multiple touch points to build that trust. Point number 2 is start building episodes backwards from the goal. Start with what you want to achieve with your podcast and work backwards. If you want your listeners to take a step, the episode has to guide them there. Start with the outcome that you want in mind. So inside, I've been working on this Notion podcast dashboard recently. And one of the things that I'm really excited about there is I start every episode as I sit down to script and research it. I start with the pain point of my listener in mind. So for today's episode, I was trying to get in the mind of the listener and understand what it is that a busy entrepreneur would need to be able to monetize or to generate leads. What are they thinking? How are they feeling? And I didn't have to go far because I'm having this same experience right now in my own podcast. And so then I ask myself, how do I solve this for the listener? How do I actually add value to their life? And then what do I want my listener to do after this episode is over? And that one question changes how you structure everything because you start to build it backwards from there. You figure out where you want to land, and then you figure out how you get there throughout the whole episode with a simple 4-part flow. You give them the hook, you give them the story, you give them value, and then you give them a call to action that's all aligned in the same direction. It's one nice arc that gets them right where you want to take them. It's not, I mean, as I'm saying it, it could sound manipulative, I guess, in one sense, but in another sense, I guess it's just organized. Like that's what business is. If you think about a really good business experience that you've had, or a really good experience in general, like there was thought. Like think of like maybe going to Disney, or buying an iPhone. Both of those companies, Disney and Apple, have a really clear picture of what they want the customer to experience while they're having an encounter together through business. At Disney, they want you to have fun and have a great time. And they've set it up to create the magic all around you. With Apple, they want you to have these quality products to work with. And they've thought about everything from the boxing and the materials there, all the way to the touch and the feel of the actual hardware that you're using, all the way down to the software and how it interfaces with everything. It all contributes to the experience. And that didn't just happen. I would argue that these companies started with the end in mind of what they wanted the customer to experience, what they wanted this person that they're entering into a business relationship with, how they wanted that to go. And it's no different when we're designing our podcast for people that we're helping. We just want to end where we're trying to get to. So whether you're using one teaching point or three, keep it clear. Make sure that they all kind of flow together, and that the call to action at the end, that the value, that the hook, that the story, they all revolve around this one thing. Think of yourself, we talked about this a minute ago with Donald Miller's StoryBrand. Think of yourself less like a teacher and more like a guide walking someone down a path. Think of, I mean, you don't have to go far. Think of all these movies. Like in Star Wars, you have Yoda and Luke Skywalker. You have Lord of the Rings. My wife and I were watching a movie last night called The Electric State. And as I've been studying this, I've been trying to pay attention in stories and movies more and more. And it showed up there. There was the hero of the story, and there was this guide that came along beside them and kind of took them under their wing and helped them kind of navigate the story to get to where the hero was trying to go and get to that transformation that the hero was trying to have. So have that mindset as you're building your podcast episodes of where you're trying to land and design from there. Point number 3, the last one, is fix the follow-through. Where are you sending them? This goes right with designing where you want the episode to land. So even if your episode is great, if the path forward is unclear or clunky afterwards, you're going to lose people. The follow-through has to be dead, stupid, simple, focused, and intentional. This was an area that I really had to be honest with myself. I did an audit of my podcast episode and my episode descriptions and realized that I had 5 different links, and it was overwhelming in the description. If you went down there to scroll down there, there was no clear picture of what I wanted you to do after you listened, or even while you were listening. It was just, would you like to connect? Try one of these 5 links. Would you like to be a part of the Facebook group? Maybe try clicking on this one. Would you like to join the newsletter? Click over here. For you as the listener, you're not sure where the most value for you is going to come from. And so that falls back on me as the host to figure out, for you as the listener, this is where I think you're going to get the most value. And so it gave me a lens to look at things through, to understand, okay, I'm shifting my links and everything to a primary call to action, and that is going to fit with every episode. Maybe not every episode, but in the description, I'm going to give one primary call to action, and that's going to fit to what I was talking about through the whole episode. So for today and for the foreseeable future, until I get a different call to action, it's going to be to join my Facebook group, because that's where a lot of conversations and a lot of value that's going to happen off camera or off microphone is going to be taking place in the days between episode drops. So for me, it makes sense that the listener journey is going to be, you listen to the episode, and maybe I give you a call to action to listen to another episode that would follow up or give more detail about a specific point in there. But it could also be that, hey, just go join the Facebook group. So it helped me understand that. And it's fine that I have extra links down there. I'm not saying get rid of all your links, but really make it clear to the listener what should happen. So to go back to that dating analogy, for you as the listener right now, my call to action at the end and in the description that's going to make sense for you. What I want you to do is I want you to go down there and click on join the Facebook group, and it's going to take you over to the Facebook group. You're going to enter your name and you're going to sign in and you're going to become a part of the group. That is the journey that I want you to take. If we're still dating and you're not completely you haven't developed enough trust to want to reach out and actually do business and spend money and do a deeper working relationship, then that is the way that we continue to date. That's the way I've set up the journey so that we can continue to interact with one another, so you can continue to build trust. Another way could obviously be to continue to listen to episodes. That's another way to continue to date. That's for something you can take away and do in your own podcast. Now, there are some people who will listen to one episode and be like, wow, I am ready to jump in and be more committed in this business relationship. And so those are the people who you don't want to leave anything on the table either. So there I have a secondary call to action for those kind of people where it says, hey, here's my calendar. If you're ready to work together more closely, let's book a free call, a discovery call, see if it's a great fit for each other, and we'll go from there. So don't leave money on the table with that. So have your primary call to action, and then let's do a secondary call to action for those who are ready to move faster. Let's see. Yeah, so another point that I had here is that your listener is the hero. Remember that, and that you're the guide. Set the course for them so that it's easy for them to follow and it's easy for them to understand what happens next. As the guide, I was doing a terrible job. I had like 7 links or 7 options for you guys to go and follow. How are you going to know which one is going to be the best for your time and for your value in what you're trying to accomplish with your podcast? You wouldn't know. And that was on me. I had to figure out how to guide the journey for the listener, for you to know what to do next in this journey if you want to work more closely with me. So that is those 3 points in a nutshell. Number 1, your podcast is not the funnel. Keep that in mind. Number 2, start building episodes backwards from the goal where you're trying to reach, and fix the follow through. Fix where you're taking people in the description and in your episode, how you're talking about it. So if I've learned anything over the last 25 episodes, guys, it's that podcasting isn't just about showing up. It isn't about showing the listener where to go. It's about showing the listener where to go next. It's not about creating a ton of content to just pump it out and to be more noise in the social media market and in the world. It's about actually creating something that's going to benefit your ideal listener avatar, that's going to actually benefit your listeners. And it's about showing that listener where they can go next to learn more, to make their life easier. And if you're anything like me, you might be putting out solid episodes. I'm not so sure I would give all of my episodes that title yet. I definitely feel like it's a work in progress, but you could have really great content and you could even be getting a little bit of traction. But if you're still wondering why it's not leading anywhere, and I would argue that you need to think about these things, and you need to create a clear path for your listeners to move forward in a relationship with you so that they know where to go. So here's what I want you to ask yourself this week. If a brand new listener discovered my podcast today and liked what they heard, would they know what to do next? Or are they just going to be like, that was great. Timmy has a great podcast. Who knows? I'm going to move on to the next thing and figure out what else I can learn. Because if you put yourself in those shoes, if you are somebody who's looking for self-help, or you're looking for a way to better yourself in a specific way, and you've looked up a podcast, you've looked up a video, you're going to listen to it, and then you're going to move on to another podcast to listen to some more if you're anything like me. But if you've created your podcast in a way where you give a ton of value, and then you give really detailed calls to action that make sense in light and in context with that call to action or with that value, then your call to action makes sense. And that listener is going to be like, you know what? I found something valuable here. I appreciate what Timmy's doing. I want to go listen. I want to go dive in more with what he's got going on and get in more with his system. And that's how it works. That's how it works for me. That's what I do when I'm out getting resources on the internet, through podcasts, through YouTube videos, that sort of thing. So I want you to take that into consideration as you're thinking through this week. And if the answer isn't crystal clear, that's your work for this week. Make the next step super obvious, dead, simple, stupid. And make the journey simple, make it fun. And start treating your podcast like the beginning of a relationship, not the entire relationship. So if you're ready to stop shouting into the void and start building a podcast that actually supports your journey, I want to invite you to come join me in the Podcast Builders Facebook group. There's a link down in the description, and it's the primary call to action, and that's what I want you to click on. Unless you are ready to talk more and have a one-on-one call with me, then by all means, please book a free call with me. More than happy to talk to you. But that's where I'm going to be sharing in the Facebook group the behind-the-scenes thoughts, post every day about having real conversations with other podcasters and helping folks like you figure out how to turn your show into lead-generating assets, not just shouting into the void. And it's a place where we can help each other build a journey that helps our listeners and makes the world a better place. I'd love to see you in there. So until next week, happy podcasting.